Hey folks, welcome back to Acer P Bonsai. I'm here today with my very first Japanese maple bonsai. I purchased this tree sometime in the winter of 2020-2021, right after I got back from Japan. And I absolutely love this tree despite the many flaws that it has. So taking a quick look around the tree, I just want to show you everything that we've got here. So let's start first here at the bottom. This is a branch that I approach grafted onto the tree 2 years ago, and then last year I cut the donor wood away, so we can get in there and take a closer look and check that out. If we spin around here, you can see I nibbled a big chunk out of the trunk, and that was to begin the process of transitioning to this as the primary leader for this bottom portion. I'm going to try to get this down into view. There is the tip of the tree. It goes way high. It's about 5 feet tall, and I am growing that whip out so that I can develop this as the new trunk line of the tree right over here. Moving up into the structure, you can see that there is a massive wound here that we are almost done healing. We'll take a closer look at that. And then there's another big chop there. Also up here in this upper portion, we'll take a closer look, but we've got this branch over here. This is an approach graft. This branch here, these are approach grafts, and then we have more branches in here that are all approach grafts. These were my first experiments with it. I think I had 4 out of 5 tried on that first go, successfully graft, so I'm really happy with that. My biggest learning lesson, I'll go slightly deeper into the parent tree. It's going to allow it to have a little bit of additional space when that swelling can sometimes push it out slightly, so that you end up with a really high quality connection point in those grafts. So you can see this massive wound that we have in the tree here, and rotating around now you can see a little bit better that we've got this other side branch, this really strong branch. We're developing this into the new leader of the tree. So we do want to continue healing that, and we are going to end up eventually digging that away even farther, but we can pick that out of there and see what's going on down in here. And it looks like there's a little bit of rot. It looks like that cut putty separated over the last few months from the tree, and we've allowed a little bit of water to get in there. For the long term of this tree, we may end up cutting a lot more of this back, but it is important that we get all of this wet tissue out of there, and we're going to need to reseal this. So I am scraping that away just with the tip of these shears here. I want to make sure we get all of that rotten tissue out of there. That is the most dangerous thing we can do, is leave rotten tissue on a Japanese maple. And again, you know, some of these little things, like we'd consider this rotten spot a mistake on this tree, but I've learned a lot, so I take all these things in stride and just continue working these trees forward. Now that I've learned a little bit more, I've started buying, you know, slightly better pre-bonsai material, but some of these older trees are still going to remain my favorites in the garden, regardless of what trees I get in the future. So I highly encourage you, if you're just getting into bonsai, to grab something that's going to give you an opportunity to experiment with some of these advanced techniques. Even if you're just doing an approach graft on a tree that's never going to be a bonsai, that's going to be a really great lesson for you. So I'm digging down in there. There's a lot of gross stuff down in there. You get that all out of there. I want to make sure that we do not have a water trough on this tree. So we're going to cut a wedge out of this and allow this tree the opportunity to freely drain out any of that fluid. And you can see some dead tissue under there. What we want to do is dig all the way down in here, try to get as much of that out as we can. We may not be able to get it all out. We certainly are going to try. Well, folks, it looks like the entire center of this tree is rotten, and that's a little bit scary. We're going to use this as a learning opportunity. There's a collar here. The dieback seems to have stopped somewhere around in here. Alright, so we have re-scarred that wound there. Here's our new leader. Growing up tall. We reassessed some of the wounds here in the upper part. Alright, so we're going to get this putty out of there. See how the inside of that wound is looking. This little branch has healed really well. Alright, so I got back up in there and I trimmed away all of the swelling tissue. I'm going to give this another opportunity to heal. And here's another one. Got it carved back. Another one back here. There's one up above it. We're not going to, because the flow is right here, we're going to leave this one alone for now. So after the last little section of video there, I realized the razor blade was not doing the job, and I went and bought some of these grinding bits for my rotary tool. So we're going to give this a chance and see if we can continue nibbling away at that rotting wood that's down in here. I really wish I would have caught this sooner. I didn't realize there was this issue, but I'm going to try my best to clean this up. Let's get in there. To fix one of these wounds, it's really important that we grind away all of the decomposed tissue. Got to get rid of all of the rot. All right, so we switched out the tip. Let's give this one a try. Goodness gracious, this one is way more intense. All right, folks, well, you probably are thinking that I must be crazy at this point because I'm continuing to dig down in here. I'm finally just getting down through all this dead wood here. It's still trailing up into this trunk here. And I think at this point, you know, what I'm probably going to have to do is an air layer now on that upper portion rather than waiting. I'm going to clean this up a little bit more, and we may just have to give up on this middle section of trunk. But I think what I need to do is I need to air layer that top and save it before that rot goes all the way up through the tree. Got to get this rot out of here. All right, now that we have hacked this tree away, gotten rid of all of the rot, at least headed down toward the bottom of the tree, it's all completely gone. I think we've adequately eliminated all of that rot, and that was an important step to make sure that this tree can get back on the right track and properly heal this major wound. We lost all of that healing progress that we had made before. That's okay. We are still working on building this new trunk line up this branch that's actually currently at the back of the screen. You guys can't see that on camera right now. That's okay. We'll do a spin around and show you that. So what I'm doing is I'm coming around here and I'm cleaning up this outer edge with the razor blade. I want to make sure we have a nice clean cut and that cambium tissue right on the edge is not damaged so that it can immediately start into the healing phase and start closing up that edge. We're not so much worried about what's going on up higher here. This is all going to be discarded eventually, but you definitely don't want to allow this infection to reestablish itself in this tree. You can see over here my rotary tool skipped a little bit. That was a little unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. Remove a little bit more of that. We basically removed half of the tree, so we probably put the apex of this tree a little bit at risk. We'll see what happens. Again, this is an experiment tree. This is one of my first maples. I've done multiple approach grafts with it. Doing all these little projects has really helped me elevate my bonsai game, because if you're not practicing these advanced techniques, you know, you're never going to get better at them. So grab a few trees that you're not super attached to and start executing. You know, you want to do air layers, thread grafts, approach grafts, you know, major cutbacks, defoliations, all that kind of stuff. You need to do that, and once you start doing those techniques, you're going to learn by observing, and you're going to become more comfortable. And then when it comes time to do major work on one of your more valuable trees, one of your trees that's more important to you, you're going to do a lot better job executing those. Hope this encourages you to roll up the sleeves, get in there and start executing on yours. Okay, so I'm going to call that good. I'm going to cover it over immediately with some of this gray Japanese cut putty here. I want to make sure that we're fully sealing in all of the edges of the wound. And you can see I'm kind of massaging this putty upwards so that I'm not wasting any. It doesn't have to be a super thick layer, but it does need to be fully coated and cut off from the air. Sure, that's all the way down, all the way over the perimeter of that wound. And we're pressing it down even out onto the bark. It helps to dip your finger in a little bit of water so that this putty doesn't stick to your finger. And I'm gonna do a little rotation so you can see just how much of this tree we have removed. You guys see that? So there's a view of the tree. This right here you can see is the attachment point for an approach graft. This entire branch was an approach graft. Rotate a little bit further. You can see this trunk line here, and this side branch just a few years ago was a tiny side branch, and now this is going to be the new apex of the tree. So from here you can see that we've eroded around this side. We need this to heal here, and we are going to remove the top of this tree eventually, and we're going to continue it along this trunk line there. So we are going to just go ahead and air layer the top of this tree, for better or for worse. So let's get up there and get started. All right, so I wanted to just pop back out to give a full perspective of the tree here. Rotating around, you can see we've got our major cuts we did here to get all the rotting tissue out. And this here is our new apex. Maybe it's even off camera, but it is a really long whip. It's probably bringing this tree up to, I'd say, about 4 or 5 feet in height. So it's really quite long. We're still letting that run to fatten up this trunk. But if I move this out of the way, you can see that we've got this upper part that's really branched out well, but there's really nothing in between here. So for bonsai, you know, this doesn't have much taper, not much interest. What I want to do is I want to air layer the entire top of this tree off so that we can create a nice wide base. We may end up shortening back some of these tops here, but I want to start with a really nice thick base. You can see that there's this really large wound here in the front from this trunk line continued on up on the original material that I got. So I chopped that off. There's a fully healed chop back in here. So really the front of the tree is more likely going to be somewhere in this angle here. So both of these major wounds are going to be hidden on the back of the tree, and then we're going to apply the air layer here so we can make maximum use of that really thick bottom. These other side branches, I don't know if we're going to keep these in the future design of this little tree, but either way they're going to serve their purpose of helping to fatten up the base of this trunk as we start to develop that radial nabari. I got a fresh razor blade. Now it's going to be slightly at an angle from your view, but what we're trying to do is follow this around the widest possible point at the base of all these branches. And there is a node line showing just below those branches, and that's kind of what we're shooting for. So I'm using this razor blade to slice along that upper edge, kind of at an angle like that. We're going to end up putting this tree on an angle after we set up the air layer so that the new tree at the top is going to sit parallel to the ground while it grows those roots. And hopefully that'll encourage it to produce more of a nice even distribution of roots around the entire perimeter here. Now this is a risky procedure because we have this large wound up here. That could cause some dieback, but at this point, again, this is our kind of our research and experimentation tree. So if something bad happens, we're just going to have to take it for what it is. The other beauty of this particular tree is it is a straight Acer palmatum seedling, and we know that these tend to be the most hardy of all of the Japanese maples. Essentially that wild type is going to tend to be a lot more vigorous. They grow faster, they recover from abuse more quickly. This is an opportunity for us to, one, practice this air layering technique. We're also practicing those carving techniques down below, and we're honing our skills as bonsai artists every time we get in here and do these advanced procedures. Even if this tree unfortunately dies, which I don't think it will, we hopefully will at least have the ability to learn something new or to gain a little more experience. All right, so I've cut through that there, and we're starting to peel away this bark. And this tree, quite a bit younger, and this bark is a lot thinner, so it's peeling away pretty easily. I'll rotate as I go here so you all can follow along with us. All right, that's looking great. And I'm gonna try to see if I can get that to come right off. It's like one of those, you know, when you're peeling an orange, it's always fun to try to get it all off in one piece, but not this time. Okay, so we're coming all the way around. And there we go. All right, we've got a really nice clean line there. I'm gonna spin around so you can see it, but you guys see it's kind of at that angle there. So we're gonna end up having to change the angle of our tree so it sits like this. And that's gonna be the future position of this tree. So I have kind of a nice elongated reaching trunk line there. The next step is we got to make sure we scrape all of that cambium tissue away. So we're going to do that all the way around the perimeter. We're continuing to get all this cambium tissue off. If we go down one layer into that xylem, that's okay. We want to make sure we're giving that signal to this tree that it's time to grow some new roots. And we do have a really nice leaf set up top. We're heading into late spring and the nights have been over 60 degrees. So that's the perfect time to start doing our propagation. You want to have it over 60 degrees Fahrenheit before you do your propagations. You can do bottom heat. And then optimally, if you can be in that 70 to 80 degree range during the day, that's about perfect. Any hotter, it may start to cause a little bit of evaporative stress on the tree. All right, so this time we're going to use this little water bowl to create our little pot out of this. This one's pretty flimsy, which is both good and bad. So it's good in that it's a lot easier to come in here and cut it to shape, but it's also going to require a lot more stabilization to make sure it's staying where it needs to. For this specific situation, I'm looking at that as an advantage though, because I am going to kind of need to finagle this up into that position to get it exactly where I want it. We've got ourselves a little handy dandy pot that we can wire together here. Punch a few holes through this so that we can sew it together. All right, so we've created our holes. That is going to come around our tree just like so. We're going to do a row of holes a little bit further in so we can cinch that down a little tighter here. So let's try that again, bring it around the tree. And there we go. That's what we want to see there. All right. It does seem a little bit difficult when you start, but it'll make more sense once we start getting this locked in place. There we go. So now, starting to get this weave started. It's going to behave a little better for us. There we go. Just like so. I should have used this clear plastic last time. It makes them for a much better video demo. You can see what I'm doing the whole way. All right, just like that. And there we go on that one. Okay, so we've got ourselves a nice little container here. Fairly well fit for the size and shape of this container. Take this wire here. I'm actually going to loop it over that branch right there. You guys see that? So that's going to hold this in place. That's awesome. Got this other little branch in here. It's not really doing us any good. Remove that. I actually want to allow this to drop a little bit on this back side. So we're going to want to have our whole pot kind of canted that direction. So I loosened this wire over here just a little bit, and then on this side I want to cinch it up tight and so it stays up in there. So let's do that. We're just going to use a small piece of aluminum wire and go up over the tree behind the branch so that it doesn't slide down. Let's get these out of there. All right, we've got ourselves attached really well over on this side. It's rotated around so you can see that attachment point right there, looped over this branch, behind this branch so it can't slide down. And now we've got our pot securely attached. Once we're finished, we're going to take our entire pot and we're going to angle it in this way so that we have a level point. All right, folks, so this is going to be another one of those do as I say, not as I do situations. I probably should have applied the rooting hormone before I attached this plastic pot, because now I've made myself quite the little mess here, but it's okay. As long as we get it in there, make sure we get it on all surfaces, that's going to be a-okay. Goober in this tree all the way around the outside. Turn it there so you guys can see this backside. Get down in there, make sure we have rooting hormone in good contact with the entire perimeter of our little tree here. All right, so we've got the rooting hormone all the way around the outside. We're gonna let this little tree sit here for about 5 to 10 minutes while that soaks in. So the next step is to get sphagnum moss packed in here down around the base. It's also gonna soak up any of that excess rooting hormone. All right, that is looking outstanding. Next, we're gonna add a little bit of bonsai soil. Here we've got a mixture of perlite and akadama. We're gonna top this thing off all the way around. We'll be pushing that moss in toward the tree. Make sure it has good contact. As we push that soil down, we're encouraging that moss to be in close contact with the tree. Nice open light perlite is gonna maintain that humidity, and of course always allow really good drainage down through the container. And that cut open container, it's really loosely tied. It's got massive holes at the bottom, and it angles down toward the center, so it is not going to hold any water other than what is absorbed by the sphagnum moss and the perlite. And that is looking good, my friends. Step back a little bit, and there we have it. So let's do a little rotation here. So you can see the tree from all angles. You can see some of that rooting hormone dripping down there. That's okay. That is going to be the new angle. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Acer P Bonsai. Hop in those comments and let me know what's going on in your Japanese maple garden.